Good morning. My name is Lior Nedivi and I am a forensic scientist. My lines of expertise are crime scene investigation and analysis and firearms examinations, including external ballistic calculations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are under attack. The forensic science discipline, including its numerous branches and sub-disciplines, are under attack by various elements unable to reconcile themselves with the scientific foundations our field is based upon. As I am only familiar with Israeli law, I'll restrict myself to that country. Many of the elements behind these attacks aren't even scientists. Among the leaders of this movement, one mainly finds defense lawyers and law professors. Especially when the subject is discussed in the media, you seldom see or hear from a true forensic scientist, but instead get lecture from a law professor like this one.
Hey, and welcome to TYT Interviews. I am your host today, Malcolm Flesher, and with me is Jennifer Mnookin, who is the Dean of the UCLA School of Law. So, as I said, Jennifer is the Dean of the UCLA School of Law, and today we're going to talk about why hopelessly faulty scientific, forensic science is being used as evidence in courtrooms across the country to convict people who are possibly innocent, possibly guilty, but we don't know based on the evidence, the forensic evidence, because it's not real science.
The Israeli Public Defense Department within the Ministry of Justice has a unit dedicated to investigate cases where faulty forensic evidence was used and resulted in innocent people being convicted. Unfortunately, most of the cases they prosecute are based on the innocence projects in the United States. If we use scientific methods and we are sure about their credibility, why are innocent people ending up in jail? When cases of wrongful convictions are discussed in the media, they always talk about elements of the forensic science discipline. For example, bite marks, hair comparison, fingerprints identification, etc. They never talk about the expertise of the person who handled the case. Look at this famous case from Madrid.
But even fingerprint evidence isn't foolproof.
The deadliest terror attack on Europe since World War II.
When terrorists in Madrid killed 193 people, the FBI found this fingerprint on one of the terrorists' bags and matched it to this fingerprint of a man in Oregon.
An international investigation led to Brandon Mayfield.
However,
2 weeks after Mayfield's arrest, Spanish investigators found the man to whom the fingerprint really belonged.
FBI researchers claim fingerprints are right more than 99% of the time, but that still leaves plenty of wrongful convictions.
Did you know that the evidence was sent to the fingerprints identification unit of the Israeli police without telling the examiner the details of the case, and the examiner ruled out Mr. Brandon Mayfield? His conclusion was, this is not the person. So whose fault was it? The forensic science discipline or the person using it? In my opinion, there is nothing wrong with the science, but the so-called experts are a different story. At this point, I should mention that in Israel, all the forensic experts have at least one academic relevant degree, and many have master's degree and PhDs. Training of a forensic expert takes between 2 to 5 years, depending on the field of expertise. Every positive comparison is re-examined by another expert who needs to verify the finding of the first one. In case of disagreement between the two, the head of the lab examines it and makes the final call. Besides the formal qualification tests, which are made by an outside institute, there are internal tests concealed as true cases to prevent copying of results by one expert from another. All of the above ensure the Israeli experts perform at high levels of competence. What else do they complain about? They claim there is a lack of statistical proof to verify our conclusions scientifically. So, let's talk about statistics. Don't ask me about the formula, I have no idea what it is. On a more serious note, I am an engineer, so I know a little bit about statistics. As scientists, I know that you need as many variables as possible to be constant. For example, let's talk about shoe prints. How many of you in the audience are wearing size 9 shoes? Do you all have the same brand and style? What about the same height and weight? Do you all walk the same way, with identical stride lengths and cadence? Do you walk with your feet in parallel, or are your feet inclined inward or outward? Do any of you have a slight limp? Do you walk on the same surfaces, or do some of you walk on gravel while others walk on red carpets? In order to collect good data for statistical analysis, we'll need to find enough people who wear the same shoe size, the same brand and style of shoe, who are the same height and weight, walk exactly the same way, and on exactly the same surfaces. How many could we find worldwide? 100 maybe? Is that big enough statistical sample for a population of millions or maybe even billions who all wear the same size? The range of conclusion in shoe prints have 7 levels of conclusions: identification, high degree of association, association of class characteristics, limited association of class characteristics, indication of non-association, exclusion, lacks sufficient detail. If identification is equal to 100%, meaning that is the shoe, what does a high degree of association mean? Is it the shoe, or am I only 99% sure? Or maybe I am 100% sure, but I only have 90% assurance in marks, and the remaining 10% is gut feeling. Is it because you only have a partial print? In that case, why don't you conclude identification like our colleagues from fingerprints do? Do you have a reasonable doubt? Then why not let that doubt tip in favor of the accused? In my opinion, this range of conclusion is the main reason why the critics demand statistics, as they want to know the percentage of assurance on each level. For comparison, in the weapons laboratory of Israel Police, we have only 3 conclusion levels. 1. Positive comparison. The cartridges or bullets originate from the same source. And in the event that we have the firearm in our possession, cartridges or bullets were fired from this particular firearm. 2. Negative comparison. There is no collection between the various cartridges or bullets and the firearm in question. 3. I do not have enough marks to arrive at a definite conclusion. That's okay. When I was asked by defense lawyer, what is your level of confidence when you conclude positive comparison, my answer was always 100%. If we are talking about guns already, let's take a popular pistol, for example the CZ75, which has many clones around the world, including my personal Bull Cherokee, which I present to you. The class characteristics of these clones are similar, as they are based on the same design. But what about individual characteristics? Can we say they are based on the same sources? Is the metal composition of the original CZ75 exactly the same as that of the Bull Cherokee? Are the cutting tools that manufacture them the same? Are the manufacturing procedures themselves the same? What about quality control? How do we compare their respective processes? What about firearms which are made in large quantities and some of their parts, common to other firearms, are made by small subcontractors? How can you gather statistics about them? But we already have statistics. If we'll take examples from the past, in Germany, the BKA examined 5,000 police service pistols of the same make and model, and they were able to identify one bullet from a murder scene. In Israel, there was a case during which 700 Uzi submachine guns were examined, and not only was the suspected weapon found, it was possible to show that the shooter tried to change parts. By the way, all the parts of the original Uzi were discovered, hidden in other Uzis, and reassembled. In the famous case of the massacre at the Cave of the Patriarch in Hebron, which I investigate, I examined 18 different Galil ARs. One of them belonged to the murderer. I was able to compare 108 cartridges to the murderer's weapon, 5 more to 2 other Galil rifles, and 1 cartridge remained unidentified as to which weapon fired it. That 1 cartridge became the source of many conspiracy theories, like there was another mysterious shooter who was able to flee the scene. My explanation, it was probably lying there and was collected with the real evidence. This is an example of the kind of white noise we get sometimes at a crime scene. I think this is a very good example of the science of firearms examination from one side and the objectivity of an examiner from the other side. I am sure many of the firearms examiners in the audience had similar cases with multiple weapons, the same make and model, they could add to the pile, just to prove there is enough data for statistical analysis. To conclude, I am an engineer. I base my work on scientific disciplines like physics, chemistry, metallurgy, etc. Therefore, I am a scientist. I am familiar with metal casting methods, with metal processing procedures, and I know and can explain why and how individual marks are made. What's not scientific about that? It's time for us to go on the offense. It's time to tell the critics, we are the scientists, they are not. They want to challenge us? Test us. Bring 10 or even 100 shoes or guns of the same make and model and ask us to identify one of them from all the others. When we'll succeed, that will put their concerns to rest. Thank you very much.